The severely beaten boy was sent to the Dragon Clan world. Deprived of the right to die and immortal, he played the role of a lone ghost, with nothing and no fear. He wants to find a way to kill the gods, he wants to find everything he once had. He will stand above all sentient beings. Against the heavens, there are exceptions, but against me, there is no hope. PS1. Be beaten first and then invincible. PS2. Not a pure dragon fan. Keywords of the novel. Journey of Dimension starting from the Dragon Clan with no pop-ups, complete collection download of Dimension Journey starting from the Dragon Clan TXT, latest chapter reading of Dimension Journey starting from the Dragon Clan. Chapter 1. Giving up your position to people in need without jumping, first 5 chapters. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Give up your position to the person in need without jumping, except for the first 5 chapters, you can jump, question. If a person really wants to die, can anyone really stop them? This is the problem that Xian Hao is facing. At this moment, he is on the rooftop of the central hospital. Today's rooftop is very lively because someone is going to jump off the building. Why do we have to jump in the hospital? Is it easy to rescue someone who didn't fall to death? Although the police downstairs have raised the cordon, there are still many onlookers, and the voices are getting louder and louder, as if saying, "Jump, jump, wait for half a day, why don't you jump?" Looking at the young girl standing on the edge of the building not far away, Xian Hao's heart raised this question. Do you want to jump? If you don't jump, please make room for it. This is a girl who looks very thin, wearing a hospital uniform, and her body is constantly trembling. Because it was facing away, Xian Hao couldn't see her appearance clearly, but from her back, he could tell that she wasn't very old. At this age, she should have enjoyed campus life, but at this moment, she was on the rooftop of the hospital. Is there another person who has been driven to a dead end? Xuan Hao murmured to himself. At this moment, there are only 3 people on the rooftop. One is a girl who wants to commit suicide, one is a police officer who came up to persuade, and there is Xian Hao who has just arrived on the rooftop. Of course, before going up to the rooftop, Xian Hao also saw the countermeasures team blocking the entrance of the rooftop corridor. The reason Xian Hao was able to come up is, I am her boyfriend, believe me, I can take her down. Of course, this is deceiving. He never thought about saving people, he couldn't even save his closest person, how could he have the heart to save others? So, he also came to jump off the building. He came to the hospital today originally for the rooftop, but he didn't expect someone to come first. It still attracts so many people to watch. But just thinking about it, it would be nice to die surrounded by everyone and even have a companion, wouldn't it? As for why choose this hospital? Probably the last resentment towards this world. The story starts from his 18th birthday. Xian Hao, 18 years old this year, lives in a small county surrounded by mountains and wilderness in his hometown. His parents go out to work on weekdays, and besides him, he has a younger sister. Both children have good academic performance. Although his parents are not at home all year round, it is safe to have a happy family. The next step is to wait for him to enter university. If he is lucky, he may meet a wealthy woman, and then he can marry Bai Fumei and reach the peak of his life. But reality gave him his favorite big mouth. After all, the protagonist should have a sister and a house, and both parents died. So, on his 18th birthday, which happened to be the day he graduated from high school, his parents who were working outside drove back to celebrate for him, and then there was no more. The originally beautiful days were like being cursed and instantly became nothing. Sometimes, he thinks, if I'm only on my birthday, if I don't let them come back, will they just? Won't they die? In addition to the house they currently live in, their parents also left him with an outstanding mortgage. He and his sister have to go to school and have no financial means, so they have to pay their mortgage. They have to hide as far as their relatives and friends are. So, for the future of himself and his sister, he chose the latter. Can't we let our younger sister drop out of school and work to support our older brother's education? Is this something that people do? Fortunately, the houses in the small county town are not very expensive, and this is considered an old community. Most of them are old houses over 20 years old, arranged in rows together, with about 7 or 8-story bungalows. There is no elevator or anything like that. Xian Hao has been living here since he was born. My parents spent most of their lives working for this house, but with only a little over half a year left, they have to pay it off and the people are gone for now. Fortunately, my parents have almost paid back, and the remaining money is only about 2,000 yuan per month. As long as he works hard, he can repay it all. Having a place to live is quite good. After calculation, even if there is no mortgage, renting a house for myself and my sister is actually similar. Whether it is rent or mortgage, it is a necessary monthly expense that cannot be avoided. In order to take care of his younger sister and make money, Xian Hao couldn't think of any other way besides making it easier to manage delivery time. After all, he, who hasn't even had time to enter university, has nothing. Afterwards, Xian Hao began his early and dark food delivery career. Every morning, he would wake up early, prepare breakfast for his sister, place it on the dining table, leave a note, pour a pot of boiling water, then unplug the 2 fully charged batteries, quietly go out with the kettle and battery in hand. Riding a second-hand electric scooter that looked almost torn apart from a certain fish, he almost ran to every corner of the city. At noon every day when he was hungry, he would buy 2 mantou to make do at the roadside. When he was thirsty, he would drink the boiled water from home. My younger sister will have lunch in the school cafeteria at noon, so he doesn't have to go home to prepare lunch for her. I just don't know if that girl has had a good meal. Xuanhao has a headache. He is worried that his sister may not have a good lunch to save money. And the fact proves that his concerns are not unnecessary. Xianye, 17 years old, attends the best national high school in the county town. She is naturally beautiful, but not a vase. On the contrary, her academic performance is very good, and she was admitted to the school with excellent grades. Since entering the school, she has been ranked in the top 3 of the whole school without falling down. Even the annual scholarship is enough to cover the cost of studying. Beautiful appearance, good academic performance, and recognized as the school flower. There are naturally many boys chasing her, but because it's high school, perhaps everyone is more reserved, or maybe she's just too cold and aloof. I have never seen her have any contact with any boys so far. The term high-cold may not be very appropriate to describe her. She is just too serious. At school, she seemed to have only books in her eyes, and her whole mind was focused on studying. It's not because she loves learning so much, but because she knows that her current opportunities are hard-won and she can't help but study seriously. So, in the eyes of girls, Xianye may be a woman who spends her days holding books and pretending to be aloof. Reading a book all day and occasionally frowning, if it weren't for being beautiful, who would read it? And boys love this kind of tone very much. The closer they are to it, the more exciting it becomes. In their view, strangers should not enter. Xianye, who has always been so serious, is much more attractive than those flashy girls. In fact, to put it simply, she still needs to be beautiful. Boy. Even frowning is so beautiful, Erguzi. Do you think someone has made the goddess angry? Girl. Perhaps you made a noise in someone's eyes. Didn't you see them reading? Actually, none of them are true. Xianye is just because she can't understand the content in the book. She is not someone who loves learning, but she has to work hard to learn and just study hard. When encountering questions that one doesn't understand, one can also feel a headache. This feeling is like a mute eating huanglian. In short, it is very frustrating. Please start reading from Chapter 7, Awakening, for those who are loved and abused, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. If you don't have a knife in your hand, your younger sister is the most vulnerable in the world. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. If there is no knife in hand, the younger sister is the cutest creature in the world. Xuanhao looked at the time and it was 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon. Of course, he is not looking forward to finishing work early. It's still too early, and dinner and late-night snacks are the most profitable times for takeout. At this time, he would rush back to prepare dinner because his sister is probably going to finish school. Take a few bites yourself and then go out to continue earning money. However, today he was lucky and received a lot of orders, which were also easy to deliver. He has almost completed his goal for the day. So he plans to start early work and pick up his sister from school. After all, earning money is not as important as his sister. Ding! Ringing bell. The sound of the school bell rang, and the students in school uniforms rushed out towards the door. Despite the crowds and wearing the same white school uniform, Xianhao still found his own sister at a glance. One of the reasons why my younger sister is beautiful is that, more importantly, there seems to be a vacuum around her. When walking, both boys and girls instinctively avoid sigh. Xianhao sighed and waved at his sister. The boys around looked at Xianhao as if they were mentally disabled. You, a delivery person, came to our school to pick up girls. What do you think? But in the following scene, they petrified. Following Xianhao's gaze, Xianya walked out of the school gate expressionlessly and also noticed her own brother. It's not possible if you don't want to pay attention. A group of people are wearing white school uniforms, and suddenly a yellow takeout uniform appears in the middle, which is too eye-catching. Puff! Xianya was momentarily stunned, then couldn't help but laugh. Amidst the surprised gazes of the boys, Xianya ran away. I didn't read it wrong, did I? The one who holds books every day. Started running. She smiled at me, did you see that? Under the staring eyes, Xianya ran to her brother. Oh, no. This is not true. No, maybe the goddess just ordered takeout. Yes, the goddess must be hungry. Damn it, I didn't notice. Then, she got on the car. Sitting sideways on the seemingly dilapidated electric scooter, with a faint smile on his face and his hand wrapped around the man's waist. The electric scooter left, carrying Xianya without looking back. The majestic wind blew up her long hair, and wherever it swept, it shattered her heart. Brother, why do you suddenly remember to pick me up? It's silly. Xianya sat in the back seat and smiled. Tisk, you're starting to dislike your brother. It hurts. Xianhao was riding his bike without looking back, but his voice could tell he was joking. Where is it? If you still dislike it, wouldn't you get in your car? Xianya pouted. Ah, woman. Cut, man. Brother. You came to pick me up, meaning no one is cooking. So what are we eating tonight? Xianya thought of this very important matter. I'm lucky today. I finished work early. How about treating you to a good meal, brother? Xianhao felt a bit embarrassed. No need, save money, and have a mortgage. How about we go buy groceries? I'll make it for you tonight. Xianyelts thought for a moment. Click, I'm back. Xuanya opened the door and shouted habitually. But there was no one in the room. Her brother was following behind her, carrying the vegetables she had just bought from the market, not much, potatoes and vegetables. Xuanhao originally wanted to buy meat, but his sister said there was still leftover preserved meat at home and asked him to save a bit. He couldn't resist his sister. Brother, I'm going to cook. Xianya snatched the vegetables from Xianhao's hand and ran into the kitchen excitedly, ready to start a big fight. Well, I'll go downstairs and get the battery. Remember to open the door for me later. Okay. Xuanhao closed the door, and behind it came a faint response from his younger sister. The dilapidated parking lot we arrived at downstairs, where all the motorcycles, electric scooters, and other vehicles in the community were parked. As it is an old community with poor public security, we still cannot park casually downstairs. There is a small room made of metal next to the parking lot, with only a torn cloth covering the contents inside. From the outside, you can vaguely see a bed and some miscellaneous small objects inside. There is also a slightly moldy wooden board next to the small room, which is probably used for wind protection at night. The man guarding the carport is an old man in his 60s and 70s, dressed in rags and tatters. He has been guarding here since Xian Hao remembered, and he also stays here at night. The parking fee is 20 yuan per month, not much, after all, there are only a few dozen cars parked here, and the old man also needs to make a living. "Good evening Grandpa Zhong," Xian Hao said to the old man. At this moment, the old man was drinking water from a stainless steel cup, and the white paint on the surface of the cup was scattered, appearing to be a bit old. The old man put on his presbyopia glasses, and Xian Hao handed over the key. There was a sticker stuck on it, which was crooked and drew incomprehensible marks. The old man has a bad memory. Sometimes when Xian Hao greets him, he often can't remember who Xian Hao is. So every person who parks here will have a symbol drawn by the elderly person on their key, which only he can understand, so he can confirm that the person is indeed here to pick up the car. After looking at the symbols, the old man smiled at Xian Hao and waved his hand to signal that he could enter. Xuan Hao entered the parking lot and took 2 batteries from the car. He held one in one hand and was holding a water bottle rope in his mouth. "Young man, walk slowly and be careful not to fall." The old man looked at Xian Hao and smiled. Xian Hao walked towards his home, carrying an electric battery and a kettle in his mouth. There was a rusty iron door downstairs, which was locked and needed to be opened with a key every time he went home. On the window of the first floor, there are several words written, "Snack Shop," and a small door opens next to the window. Xuan Hao didn't have any free time and couldn't open the iron door. Every time he went home like this, he would borrow from that small shop and say, "Good evening, Auntie." "Oh, Xiao Hao came back so early today." Climb up the 7th floor in one breath and then knock on the door with your knees. Dong dong dong. Soon, the voice of the younger sister inside rang out, "Who?" Although it was a bit ambiguous, my sister still recognized his voice and opened the door for him. Puff. "Brother, what kind of design are you?" My younger sister is wearing a school uniform and hasn't changed yet, with an apron hanging in front of her and a kitchen knife in her hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Reality is always so cruel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Reality is always so cruel, didn't I rush back for dinner? My sister finally cooked it herself. Xuan Hao walked in, hooked the door with his toes, put down his things, and lay down on the sofa in the living room. Climbing the 7th floor in one breath is indeed quite tiring. "Is the meal not ready yet?" Xian Hao asked as he looked at his sister who had entered the kitchen again. "The food is ready and in the pot. But the dishes haven't been stir-fried yet. I'm afraid you'll come back and cool down. It'll be fine in a moment." Xian Ye's voice came from the kitchen, mixed with the sizzling sound in the oil pan. A few minutes later, Xian Ye turned off the fire and served a plate of dishes with one hand on the table. "Get up, go and serve the rice quickly." "I don't have enough hands," she said. "Oh," Xian Hao stumbled and ran to the rice cooker. He opened the rice cooker and steamed a small bowl of leftover cured meat on top of the rice. He filled 2 bowls of rice and drew 2 pairs of chopsticks. Xian Hao sat at the dining table holding 2 bowls and 1 bowl between them. "How about trying the taste quickly?" Xian Ye propped her chin. Xian Hao looked at the 2 dishes on the table, shredded potatoes and green vegetables. "No matter how they were stir-fried, they shouldn't taste bad. How have you been studying lately?" After taking a bite of food, Xian Hao began to shift the topic. Next time, let's do it ourselves. It's okay, your sister and I have always had good grades. Xianye swallowed a mouthful of rice, feeling a bit guilty. She felt like she had hit a bottleneck and had been struggling to understand books lately. Is someone bothering you with your studies? I'll go smoke him, Xianhao said viciously, taking a mouthful of food. Where is there? I'm very cold and aloof, Xuanya said with a smile. Also, don't try to change the topic. I'll ask you if it tastes good or not. Good. Eat, good time. Can my sister make something delicious? Xianhao quickly picked up the food and stuffed it into his mouth. Suddenly, he hammered his chest, making a choking look as if he was eating too quickly, and ran to the side to fetch water to drink. Xuanya looked at her brother's panicked expression, seeming to be in a happy mood. After taking a sip of water, Xianhao finally breathed a sigh of relief. He finally washed the food down and couldn't figure out why his sister was so perfect. Why can't he overcome the challenge of cooking? What's even more terrifying is that the girl can eat with relish. Looking at Xianye eating the dishes calmly on the dining table, Xianhao suspected that his taste buds might be malfunctioning. Holding a cup of water, opening the window, the breeze carried the scent of the mountains and wilderness. The sky began to darken, and on the clean blue sky, a rose-like veil slowly stretched out. The burnt dawn quietly permeates through the mountains and fields, as if searching for something forgotten here yesterday. It passes through the bushes, even sliding under fallen leaves, wandering around every corner. The afterglow adorns the earth, making it dress up to welcome the arrival of the moonlight. Xianhao stared blankly at the scenery outside the window, enjoying the rare moment of tranquility. I originally thought that life would be like this in the future. Although it has been a bit hard, I can still tolerate it. The only headache he felt was probably the tuition fee for his sister's future college education, which is not compulsory however, as the saying goes, good fortune never comes in pairs, and misfortune never comes alone. Before Xianhao could come up with a solution to the tuition fee, another disaster struck his siblings. My younger sister suddenly fainted at school, and the teacher called him to contact him. He threw down the takeout in his hand and directly compensated the customer, running towards the hospital. Xianhao was very fortunate that his younger sister fainted during school, otherwise by the time he returned home, perhaps he would have leukemia. These 3 words fiercely tore apart his happiness. He once suspected that he had heard wrong and repeatedly confirmed with the doctor, causing his heart to plummet. At the same time, I began to doubt my life. Is my family really cursed? First, my parents, then my sister, and then should it be my turn? The doctor said there are 2 treatment options for leukemia. The first aspect is chemotherapy. The second is hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, commonly known as bone marrow transplantation. To receive treatment, the equipment in this small county town was certainly not sufficient to support it, so my sister was transferred to the central hospital in the nearest city to her hometown. In terms of treatment, there should be no problem in theory. The transplantation of hematopoietic stem cells also involves his brother. Of course, it is impossible for a sudden examination to reveal that we are not siblings. But now there is a more deadly problem, which is the huge medical expenses. Each treatment requires significant medical expenses. A single chemotherapy cycle costs approximately 50,000 to 100,000 yuan, and the process is not only painful, but also requires an unknown number of treatment courses. The transplantation of bone marrow needs to consider whether it is autologous stem cell transplantation or allogeneic transplantation, and whether it is fully compatible. Overall, it depends on whether the bone marrow reconstruction time is relatively fast, whether the process is smooth, and whether it is a serious infection. Bone marrow transplantation alone costs between 300,000 and 1 million yuan in the early stages, and the post-transplant treatment, including anti-rejection and anti-infection, requires huge medical expenses. He certainly didn't want to see his sister endure the pain of chemotherapy, but the doctor, considering their financial situation, gave the plan of chemotherapy. This is the only limit that Xian Hao can bear. Even so, he must mortgage his family's house. Watching my younger sister undergo chemotherapy, from having long black hair to having no hair and gradually losing weight, enduring the pain every day, I still showed him a "don't worry" smile. Xuanhao felt a piercing pain in his heart. He hated himself for being too incompetent, which was why his sister suffered such pain. Taking care of his sister every day, he almost forgot the time. The only thing he can do is to pray to the deity who doesn't know if it exists, praying that his sister can get better soon. But the gods did not hear his prayers. The hospital informed him that the effect of chemotherapy did not meet expectations and could not suppress the condition. He had to undergo a bone marrow transplant to find a way to prepare for the surgical cost. At that time, Xuanhao's heart was full of excitement. He had spent all his money on chemotherapy in just a few months. Now, where should he go to find tens of millions of surgical expenses? Watching his sister's condition worsen, he had no choice. He didn't know where the money came from, but only knew that if left untreated, his only relative would also leave him. Xuanhao prayed to the doctor. "Can we perform the surgery first, and then he will find a way to raise the money?" Even knelt down to plead, but all I received was the coldness that penetrated deep into my heart. Is reality so cruel? Xuanhao Center is full of questions. Don't they all say that doctors and parents care about it? I also want to save her, but I don't have the ability. Whether it's equipment, operating room, equipment, or medication, it's not something I can freely adjust. If I mess around, it will affect the treatment arrangements of other patients. I'm sorry. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. One-Stop Service, buy one get one free. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. One-Stop Service, buy one get one free. The doctor described his difficulties, and without the approval of the dean, he could not perform the surgery privately. Xuanhao hoped this was true, so he went to plead with the hospital director for leniency, but the answer he received silenced him and his heart sank to the bottom. Although I really want to help you, I can't do anything about it. The dean glanced at him and ignored him. He understood the dean's meaning, and his helplessness was probably due to insufficient money. The dean in a white coat in front of him was not so selfless. This is reality. The only way for him now is to gather enough money. Xuanhao had only one wish in his heart at the moment, which was to save his sister, so he knelt down the threshold for every relative he could find. But the astronomical figures of millions of yuan are still far away. Chemotherapy is like a bottomless pit, relying solely on insurance cannot sustain expenses, and his house has already been mortgaged. He is isolated and has no chips to exchange for money. Even if we go to a charity organization to crowdfund, my younger sister probably won't wait for him to take the money back. Finally, he pinned all his hopes on high-interest loans. But high-interest loans are not something that anyone can borrow, and his background has been thoroughly investigated. The delivery person, whose house has been mortgaged, has no father or mother, and has no source of income. No matter which one, no one is willing to take the risk of lending money to him. In a private room of an unnamed building, Xian Hao knelt on the ground. Sitting on the mink sofa in front of him, was a bloated middle-aged man. The man crossed his legs, wore a large gold necklace around his neck, and held a burning cigar in his ring-filled hand. His face was full of disdain for the young man kneeling in front of him. "Brother Long. Please lend it to me. As long as I cure my sister, I can be a good ox and horse for the rest of my life." Xian Hao leaned his forehead against the floor, praying, and the bloodstains oozing from his forehead dyed the carpet red. "Hey, kid, don't dirty my carpet." The middle-aged man took a sip of his cigar and frowned slightly. "If you want cows or horses, I have plenty of money. I want to buy as much as I want, and I want you to come. It's meaningless and it doesn't benefit me at all. Brother Long, what do you want? I'll give it. I'll give it all. You give it. What do you have? Life. This is the least valuable thing in the world. Men disdain it. In his view, the person in front of him has no value to him, and there is no reward for squeezing them. If he didn't spend money and work tirelessly under his own command, perhaps he would consider raising a dog. Ding ding ding. The urgent phone rang. The man answered the phone and listened to the report coming from the other end. He didn't speak, but his eyes changed. Looking back at Xian Hao, his eyes showed mockery, pity, and even cruelty. Line. The man put down the phone and suddenly said to Xian Hao. Really? Xian Hao lifted his head excitedly, with hope flashing in his eyes. At this moment, in his eyes, perhaps the man who gave him hope seemed to have a halo behind him, just like God. Really? The man took a puff of his cigarette ring and looked down at Xian Hao from a high position. Thank you. Xuan Hao once again pressed his head against the floor. Perhaps his head would be too heavy to lift in the future, but at this moment, he breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Pa, the man clapped his hands and a strong man wearing a black suit and sunglasses walked in carrying a backpack. He slapped the backpack in front of Xian Hao and opened it. A pile of red banknotes was packed tightly, and it was the first time Xian Hao had seen so much cash. Tears couldn't help but flow from his eyes. This is 1 million, do you want to count? The man said. No need, I trust Brother Long. Xuan Hao shook his head, he now has no right to question. Alright, go away. If it's not enough, come find me again. Yes. Xuan Hao hurriedly left with his backpack on his back, as time was very important to him. As Xian Hao left, the man's face twisted into a disdainful smile. Boss, why lend it to him? It's not good for us, is it? The strong man was puzzled. Don't you think it's interesting to give people hope and make them despair again? The man's face furrowed with a smile and said, in less than 2 days, this useless person will come back with money and be grateful to me. I'll do whatever I want then. Xuan Hao touched the backpack on his back and a rare smile appeared on his face as he thought he could save his sister. But when he hurried to the hospital, he felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. It's already too late. Just now, his sister left him forever, and he didn't even see her for the last time. When his younger sister left, she was very lonely and had no relatives around her. Xian Hao didn't know if his sister had any last words, he only knew that the hospital asked him to collect the body, and the hospitalization fee he had previously paid had already expired. Xian Hao's eyes were lifeless, and he even forgot to shed tears, only despair overflowing from his eyes. He walked step by step with his sister in his arms. Aimlessly, their home is long gone. Where should he go with his sister? Xuan Hao's younger sister was very quiet in his arms, as if she was asleep. At this moment, the siblings stood tall on the street, and the flow of people seemed to have noticed nothing wrong, each busy and in a hurry. Until late tears burst out from Xian Hao's eyes like a broken embankment. Ah! He suddenly knelt on the ground, howling in despair. The people around finally realized something was wrong. Who would have thought that someone would wander the streets holding a corpse? Child. If a person dies, they cannot be resurrected. It's better to bury them earlier. A skinny middle-aged man approached Xian Hao and probed his sister's breathing with his hand. Xuan Hao looked at the man in front of him and realized that he should arrange a funeral for his sister first. Look, this is my business card. Do you need it? The skinny man smiled and handed over a white business card. Xuan Hao paused for a moment, took the business card, glanced at it, and smiled. Funeral procession, affordable price, buy one get one free, including after-sales service. Is it true that someone gives pillows when you're really tired? Thank you, Xian Hao replied with a smile. Excuse me, is buying one get one free really true? Yes. A man is somewhat inexplicably strange, he just writes to play, is there really someone who needs it? Well, that's great. I want the best funeral. Xian Hao looked at the man with sincere eyes. Of course, I will definitely do it for you, the man said. Let's help my sister with it first. Buy a wig, buy the best-looking clothes. Xian Hao withdrew 10,000 yuan in cash as a deposit and handed it to the man, speaking expressionlessly without checking if the man next to him had heard. The man nodded and bowed, realizing that on the street, the two of them were able to discuss funerals as if they were alone. The people around couldn't help but avoid them. The sky was gray and it started to rain. The tomb has already been dug on the ground. Xian Hao, dressed in a black and straight mourning uniform, walked step by step, holding an umbrella and sword in his hand, as if wanting to tear apart this damn rain curtain. This funeral had no relatives or friends, except for Xian Hao, only the thin man as the pastor and the band he arranged. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Death. A band arranged in a echelon, dressed in black uniforms, desperately tried to protect their beloved instruments under their jackets in the face of the rain. They didn't understand why the employer didn't postpone the funeral. They gathered around the coffin like this, lying flat on the other side, a wooden box without wreaths or flowers, but it was the only warmth in this place, buried in this endless raindrop, the rain monotonously hitting the ground, never ending. The emaciated man, as a pastor, was reciting his eulogy. He coughed lightly, followed by several sounds, and then the bass horn, long horn, horn, short horn, and bass flute played together. The instruments shimmered with golden light in the rain curtain, and the sound pierced through the rain curtain and spread to the distance, but they all sank, dissipated, and stopped. Everything retreated under Xian Hao's umbrella, and at this moment, Xian Hao could no longer hear any sound. His gaze kept falling along the rain. The shoes are stuck in the mud, and the rainwater flows into a small river into the empty tomb. Funerals are prepared for the living, and they need a place to vent their sadness, but obviously, Xian Hao cannot vent his emotions. I have already given you the money. In the afternoon, I will come to the central hospital and there is a funeral that I need you to arrange. After Xian Hao finished speaking, he turned around and prepared to leave, without asking the man if he heard him. Excuse me, sir, whose funeral is it? Where can I find you specifically? The man asked. If you go, you will understand. Xian Hao propped up his umbrella and walked towards the distance step by step. Go to the central hospital, thank you. Xian Hao stopped a taxi. Sir, are you sure? This is a long distance. The driver hesitated. A stack of banknotes was thrown onto the passenger seat. Don't talk nonsense, let's go. Xian Hao's face remained expressionless. The driver glanced at him and saw that the young man was wearing mourning clothes. Perhaps my family has passed away, so I am in a hurry to rush to the hospital. I don't need to give so much, I really don't understand the thinking of wealthy people. The rain didn't stop and the road conditions weren't very good. Just now, he was almost rear-ended by a BMW that didn't have time to brake. Xian Hao's luck was really bad. He felt that one day he would also be inexplicably sent away. The driver cursed incessantly at the stupid BMW female driver, who almost hit his car but just now. Master, please hurry up, I'm in a hurry, Xian Hao urged him. There's nothing I can do, little brother. We're about to enter the city, with cameras and traffic lights everywhere. I can't make it fast no matter how much money you give me. The driver felt a bit embarrassed. A stack of banknotes was thrown onto the passenger seat. Sleeping trough, MD labor and management went all out today. Even if the heavenly King Laozi came, he couldn't stop me. Little brother, you can sit still. The driver pressed the accelerator all the way to the bottom, and the engine in the front of the car emitted a series of unpleasant hisses. A few seconds later, a Volkswagen taxi on the main road in the city seemed to be going crazy, speeding and overtaking countless times. Countless passers-by and drivers on the road were stunned, and this car even ignored the red light. Is the score enough? Return to the beginning of the timeline. On the rooftop, Xian Hao walked over to the girl as if nothing had happened and looked downstairs. The rain had already stopped and the ground was still slightly damp, but it didn't affect him. Well, it's quite high, I shouldn't be able to survive. You. Don't come over. If you come over again, I'll jump. The girl looked at Xian Hao, who suddenly walked over and felt a little flustered. Xuan Hao turned his head and finally saw the girl's face clearly. Well, it's not bad. With a beautiful woman as my companion, I won't be too lonely on the road to the underworld. Shut up. I don't have time to force you around, you jump, I jump, you know. Xian Hao's face remained expressionless. You're killing me. I'm dying. You're still killing me, woo-woo. The girl suddenly burst into tears. The police in the distance saw this scene and felt even more that it must have been a couple's argument. They would come down with a little persuasion. Noisy, why are you talking so much nonsense when you jump up the stairs? Xian Hao became impatient. I'll go down and wait for you first. I hope you're not afraid. Before he could finish speaking, Xian Hao fell head down. Even if it was a lawn below, there was no chance of survival. Ah! It wasn't Xian Hao who screamed, he couldn't scream anymore and fell to the ground with flesh and blood, like a puddle of tomato sauce. Even if it was a hospital nearby, there was no need for rescue. The girl still on the rooftop was frightened and screamed. The police saw a change in the situation and immediately hugged the girl and dragged her back. The girl's legs were all weak, and when she saw Xian Hao's miserable situation, she completely lost the courage to jump down. It's better for her to choose to die of illness than to die so ugly. Sigh. What can't be passed? It's a pity. The police are feeling confused at this moment. It's different from what was agreed upon. Didn't it mean they advised people in the past? Why did you jump down on your own? The girl was taken away by the police for ideological education. Then the police officer realized that the reason the girl jumped off the building was because she couldn't afford the exorbitant treatment fees and didn't want to implicate her family, so she decided to settle it on her own. And he was deceived. Xian Hao had nothing to do with this girl, just the kind of person who simply wanted to jump off a building and couldn't stop him. In terms of medical expenses, you don't have to worry. Just now, the hospital contacted and said that there is a kind-hearted person who has already paid the fees for you, and there is even more left. There is nothing that cannot be passed, let's live well. The police officer looked at the girl in front of him and thought of the young man who didn't jump back in front of him, feeling a little emotional. Can you tell me? Who is that person? The girl's eyes turned red. Sorry. That person only left one backpack of money. The emaciated man followed Xian Hao's instructions and arrived at the central hospital, then he was also confused. Although the person was covered in blood and flesh, he recognized the clothes on their body, which were the mourning clothes he provided. This is such a ruthless person, arrange a funeral for himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. 1. Curse you oh. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6-1. Curse you oh, where is this? Wasn't I dead? Xuan Hao opened his eyes, feeling a bit puzzled. He remembered that he had indeed jumped off a building, and that he must have died so much that he couldn't die anymore. There was also a girl who jumped off a building with him. He looked around, surrounded by a vast expanse of white, with nothing to be seen except for the blank space. Including under his own feet, he can feel stepping on the physical object, but it is also a blank space, integrated with the surrounding environment, and indistinguishable. Is this heaven? It's so lonely. Where's the girl who jumped off the building with me in a team? Xian Hao felt a little regretful in his heart. This is not heaven. That girl was saved by you. She didn't dare to jump when she saw your miserable situation. That expression is really interesting. A teasing voice came in. Xuanhao was stunned, and suddenly a bald man appeared in front of him. It's not bald, it's a bald, glowing type, completely indistinct in appearance, but from the sound, it sounds like a man. The man is very tall, no, not just tall. He hangs diagonally above Xuanhao, holding his chest with both hands and looking down at him. Although he couldn't see his expression clearly, Xuanhao could feel that he was laughing and mocking. Who are you? Xuanhao asked. I am a god. God. Menstrual illness. Xuanhao looked puzzled. Is heaven really a madhouse? Young man, it's very impolite of you to behave like this. Has no one taught you to bow your head and be humble? The man who claimed to be a god spoke calmly. Blaspheming the gods is a serious crime. Curse you, lowering my head and being humble. If it works, would I still be here? You claim to be a god, can't you see my past? My working parents are already cold, who came to teach me. Xuanhao became more and more excited as he spoke. Hee, of course I know your past. I've been watching your parents' death, your sister's death. And your prayers to the gods. I've heard them all. The man who claimed to be a god looked down at Xuanhao. You. Xuanhao's pupils shrank violently, wanting to punch the guy in front of him. To be precise, his fist had already swung out, and he felt his fist still moving forward, approaching the man in front of him infinitely. He could almost touch it, but the gap between them seemed to be separated by the entire universe and could never be touched. It's useless, what separates us is infinity. Ordinary people cannot touch the gods. The man shook his head helplessly. You don't need to be so angry, do you? I didn't kill them, I'm just a bystander. Didn't you say you heard my prayer? Xuanhao withdrew his fist and gritted his teeth, shouting word by word. I heard you, so what? The man dug out his ears that were hidden from the light and couldn't see. What qualifications do you have to demand that I must respond to your expectations? You're just an ordinary person with the ability, go save it yourself. Xuanhao clenched his fists tightly until he exerted all his strength, and then he let go. The man in front of him is telling the truth. He really has no right to ask others to do anything for him. The death of his parents was an accident, and the death of his sister was his own poverty. All of this, ultimately, is only his own problem. Shen looked at Xuanhao's clenched and released fist with great interest and said, It seems like you figured it out, right? But it's already too late. You were wrongly accused as soon as you came up, and even Shen was angry. He said, Curse you. Are you really not a god? Curses are a demon's specialty, right? I'm already dead. Can you really make me die again? Xuanhao was confused. Do you want to die? The deity asked with a smile. Is this unclear? My loved ones have all died. What's the point of living? Do you want me to dance again? Xuanhao pursed his lips. If you want to die, then I won't let you die. From now on, I swear in my divine capacity, cursing you for eternal life. You will never die or grow old. Even if you are bombed into scum, don't think about dying. Your spirit will remain clear except for normal sleep. No matter what kind of injury you may suffer, don't lose consciousness. I will let you savor every pain. Don't think about turning yourself into a dementia, vegetative person, or crazy person. I promise that even if the world is destroyed, you can still live well. Experience it well. This eternal loneliness. Of course, jumping again will satisfy you, the deity said and snapped his finger. Xuanhao's feet were empty, and a sense of weightlessness came from him. The surroundings were still endless white, but he could clearly feel himself falling. Hello, malicious. Bang. Ah. The sound of an object falling came, followed by a pig-like scream. It was Xuanhao calling out because it was too painful. He didn't know the height of his fall, but every cell in his body was conveying intense pain to him. He could feel that his whole body was scattered, and his lower body was wet. If nothing unexpected happened, it should be his own blood. Apart from being conscious and experiencing continuous severe pain, he couldn't move at all. In the eyes of others, he should be in a muddy state now. Oh, my goodness! What is this thing? It's falling from the sky. In the autumn of 1900 AD, late at night, drizzle, Hamburg port. A well-proportioned man took out a long knife hidden in a windbreaker, held the silver inlaid handle in his hand, and poked a puddle of flesh on the ground. The man wore an ancient silver ring on his finger, and his golden eyes narrowed into a slit. Through the brown lenses of his eyes, he looked at objects on the ground, and the curiosity and vigilance in his eyes could not be concealed. Menek, be careful. The trading time is coming up soon, and what's happening now may be very dangerous. Don't make any mistakes, deal with it quickly. Lu Shanyan walked behind Menek, who was an authentic Chinese, 25 years old. His eyes were brown and black, and the lines of his cheeks were soft and clear. His figure was similar to Menek, and he belonged to the type of person who looked thin when dressed and had flesh when undressed. He was covered in a pitch-black trench coat that covered the Qing dynasty dress he was wearing inside, hiding his thick braids in his top hat. He seemed a bit cautious at the moment. After all, something sudden might affect their transactions. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. 2. Repeated Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7-2. Repeated Death. Menek poked the flesh mud on the ground again and turned his head to look at Lu Shanyan beside him. Most people wouldn't easily recognize him as an Easterner. After all, his current attire is very fashionable in this era, and most Easterners are not so open-minded. Lu Shanyan can be said to be a key member of the Westernization movement. In the 16th year of the Guangxu reign, he was selected to be sent to the Tunguen Hall in the capital and is now a 5th-rank military officer of the Qing dynasty. But he has a deep understanding of European languages and technology. For example, the 2 metallic flashes he holds in his hands now, which are fierce goods that still reflect their luster like swords in the pitch-black night, 2 silver large-caliber revolvers. These are 2 specially modified guns that can be used by Yamahiko Lu to shoot 40 bullets in a very short amount of time, and his guns are always firing without fail. Lu Shanyan is not one of those who have smoked opium and are powerless. Like Menek, he is a dragon slayer who has experienced countless battles. They always carry knives and guns with them, which can help them solve many problems. Just like now. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots were fired. Lu Shanyan fired 2 shots at the meat mud on the ground. They didn't know what it was, but visible to the naked eye, this guy was wriggling, as if trying to regroup. This makes him feel very uncomfortable, and being able to do so is probably at least a 1st or 2nd generation, right? It's really interesting. Maybe we'll get 2 specimens this time. Do we have more research data? Menek frowned slightly. I think we should burn him down, preferably not leave any cells. 2 shots down, I saw that the meat mud on the ground was still wriggling, and Lu Shanyan's forehead was sweating. If it was really an unknown Dragon King, it would be a disaster when he recovered. Sleeping slot. Sleeping slot. It hurts so much. Who is repairing the wound with MD? MD is still here. Sleeping slot. Speak up and don't shoot. It hurts. Xuanhao roared in his heart. Since just now, he has been tormented. The 2 lunatics in front of him were one wielding a knife and stirring on him, while the other lunatic even had a gun. The key is. Can you 2 speak Chinese? My English is not very good. He really wanted to speak, but his body didn't allow it. It seemed like these 2 guys were going to do something even more outrageous to him. He was very scared and panicked now, and at the same time, He cursed him in his heart and threw him into this unknown place. The damn god's whole family greeted him all over, although he didn't know if God had a family. Menek looked at the things on the ground, pondered for a moment, then waved his hand. A young man with blonde hair and double-skinned glasses walked over silently. He looked only around 20 years old, and his handsome face still had a hint of childishness. But Menek and Yamahiko Lu both know that this young man named Anger holds a Cambridge doctoral degree in theology and literature, and more importantly, the folding knife in his hand is not for cutting fruits. Anger took out a folding knife from his pocket, pushed open the blade, and cut open the kerosene barrel he was holding in his other hand. The technique was clean and sharp, and the iron barrel was as fragile as paper in front of him. He looked at the figures on the ground with some hesitation. In the end, he handed the oil barrel to the person standing in front, Mr. Lu Shanyan. Sometimes you can't hesitate, keep your heart high, otherwise you will pay a painful price. Lu Shanyan looked into Anger's eyes and let out a deep sigh, splashing kerosene onto the meat mud on the ground. Then he took out a matchbox from his pocket, lit a match, and threw it up. Ah! It hurts me so much. Shit, can you give me some pleasure? Xian Hao roared in his heart, every cell of his was burning. He didn't understand how these pains were conveyed to his spirit. Normally, if it burned like this, his nerves should have burned out too. Brain. Is that thing precocious? This damn god, this curse is not scientific. The three of them retreated not far away and looked at the flames burning on the ground, all frowning tightly. Shit. What exactly is this? How can it recover faster as it burns? The first generation of seeds didn't have this kind of vitality, did they? Menek cursed. Asterisk 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 dot. A corpse crawled out of the raging fire, struggling to grab onto the ground, covered in flames. His whole body was burnt to the point of being unrecognizable, and his eyes were even empty, like a undead crawling out of hell. In the drizzle, the flames slowly faded, and the corpse was covered in burnt black, with only non-combustible material remaining. It seemed that the kerosene had also been burned, but he was still moving. Compared to the previous meat paste, it now appears more complete. Menek and his companions were already confused. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that a puddle of flesh could be reshaped in the raging fire. Do you believe me if I say he's not the Dragon King? Menek clenched his long sword in his hand, his calf muscles tense, ready to charge forward at any time. Will the Dragon King scream so mournfully? Lu Shanyan had already put on a new magazine. Henri, please do not dock the ships that are in contact with the transaction yet. Notify everyone to evacuate from the port. This place is about to become a battlefield. Yes. Anger didn't stop, turned around and started running wildly, of course not running away. He must arrange everything as soon as possible and then come back to support. Bang! Another gunshot rang out, and war had already begun. Anger's pace quickened even faster. I said. I can't die. It hurts. Can I have a good time? To be honest, I also really want to die. Do we have something to say? Well? Xian Hao said to the three people in front of him with difficulty. His abyss was hoarse, sounding like it had come from hell to others. He didn't know if the other person could understand, but it was too painful for him to care so much. Chinese. Menek was somewhat puzzled. His Chinese was not very good, and he turned his head to look at Lu Shanyan. Here, only Lu Shanyan was Chinese and he could understand. Yes. Lu Shanyan was also stunned. Does this sound like begging for mercy? What did he say? Menek asked. He said he can't die, it hurts very much, he wants to die, give him some relief, and let's have something to say. Lu Shanyan pulled the trigger again expressionlessly. Bang! Ah! Xian Hao's just-grown body has been punctured again. It seems that this guy is not very threatening, Menek walked up to Xuanhao and poked Xuanhao's body with a long knife. Be careful, what if it's fake? If you want to deceive us and wait for him to recover, this kind of vitality has nothing else but the Dragon King. Lu Shanyan's expression was serious. So we're here. We'll make up for it every other moment. Menek joked, raising his long knife in his hand. Dragon King. I'm not Dragon King. I'm just an ordinary person. Xuanhao understood what Lu Shanyan was saying and was surprised. Dragon King. He seemed to have some associations, but he couldn't be sure because he couldn't see anything now, and could only vaguely hear the conversation between these two people. Although he had good grades, he had dropped out of school and had forgotten about English long ago. He said, he's not the Dragon King, he's just an ordinary person. Lu Shanyan heard Xianhao's voice and sneered at the corners of his mouth. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. 3. I won't die, but I'm afraid of pain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8-3. I won't die, but I'm afraid of pain, ordinary people. Menek also finds it quite funny. Have you ever seen an ordinary person with such tenacious vitality? The Dragon King is just like that. Puff. A knife stabbed into Xianhao's back, causing him to scream in pain again. Brother, brother, brother. I called you guys brother. I was wrong, don't mess with me anymore. It really hurts. Xuanhao was about to collapse. The two lunatics in front of him seemed to have completely misunderstood what he was saying and were still tormenting him. Normal people should be afraid when they see this kind of undead monster and turn their heads to run away, shouldn't they? How could there be such courage? Oh. Are you wrong? Where is the mistake? Lu Shanyan walked up to Xianhao, and a silver revolver landed on his head. Xianhao was confused. Can you understand what I'm saying? Are you still hitting me? Do you still have human nature? Bang. Another shot, my head exploding. A few minutes later. Xuanhao's head recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye, even faster than before, and even his eyes recovered this time. Ah. It hurts a lot, can you listen to me explain? Why don't you explain? Xianhao was about to cry, and finally he saw clearly the two people in front of him, a foreigner and a Chinese. Why are there any questions? Because he saw the dazzling golden eyes of these two people. Sorry, my hand slipped. Lu Shanyan apologized without any apologies. Alright, actually I just wanted to try, is it really impossible to die? Is this something that's unclear? Xianhao was going crazy. Is this guy abnormal? A sadist? No, it's not that simple. This guy recovers faster and more thoroughly every time, and it's really dangerous. We need to find a way, Menek frowned and said to Lu Shanyan. Lu Shanyan also had a headache. Are you starting to speak English again? Is bullying me uncultured? Xianhao said. Oh, sorry, my friend doesn't speak Chinese very well. Lu Shanyan once again placed a revolver on Xianhao's head. No, don't get angry anymore, it really hurts. Xianhao swallowed his saliva. As a Dragon King, you are indeed a bit lacking in backbone, said Lu Shanyan. I'm not even afraid of death, why do I lose my backbone? Xianhao was speechless. Kaka. Lu Shanyan slowly pressed the trigger. Brother, I was wrong. Don't shoot. Aren't you not afraid of death? But I'm afraid of pain. Alright, do you have anything to say? Lu Shanyan increased the force of his gun against Xianhao's head. If we can't convince you, in order to prevent you from fully recovering, I will give you a gun every few moments. I still have a few hundred bullets on me, which is enough for us to transport you back. At that time, we will arrange to continue feeding you bullets. If we can't find a way to kill you, then generation after generation, until forever. Lu Shanyan's devilish whispers reminded Xian Hao of that bastard who claimed to be a god. Is this a curse? Sigh. Xian Hao sighed and forced himself to calm down. He must now understand his situation in order to find a way to persuade the person in front of him. Although he knew that these two lunatics might not necessarily believe him, he had no other choice. Before that, can you tell me what the Dragon King you're talking about is? And where is this? Are you really not sure what Dragon King is? Lu Shanyan frowned with some confusion, but he still did not believe Xian Hao's words. Of course, I have lived for 18 years and have never heard of any ghost Dragon King. I am a good communist youth, and I believe in science. Oh. Science. Lu Shanyan looked at Xian Hao like a fool, his gun pressing harder. Communism. What is that? Aren't you Chinese? Xian Hao was surprised. Of course I am Chinese, but I am the Revolutionary Party. The Westernization movement. Lu Shanyan frowned. Shit, Westernization faction. Wait. What time is it now? I mean what era? Xian Hao's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at the man in front of him. Lu Shanyan squatted in front of him, only to realize the clothes the man was wearing and the braids hidden under his hat. In 1900. Lu Shanyan's face remained expressionless, and he didn't want to talk to this guy anymore. From the previous conversation, he could tell that this guy is not from this era, so there is only one answer. This guy is the Dragon King who has lived for countless years and even forgot his own era. In 1900. Dragon King. Golden eyes. Xian Hao looked at the young man in front of him with golden eyes and murmured to himself. All the clues were connected in his mind, and he finally understood what the man who claimed to be a god had said. The curse is real, he really won't die. He had already experienced it firsthand just now. It's sour and crazy, and his spirit is like that damn deity said. No matter how bad his body is, even if the nerve cells are gone, he will feel pain. As for the destruction of the world, he won't die either. This damn god can send him to another world to continue living. And here, it proves that in this world, if all his judgments are correct, then this is the world of the dragon race. A world of mixed race and dragon battles for thousands of years. And now he is in an era before the protagonist appears, where technology is not as advanced but there is chaos among the masses. Sigh. Xian Hao sighed again. I have already made it clear to the manager. Can you listen to me and speak carefully now? Xian Hao looked sincerely at the man in front of him. Are you very calm? Lu Shanyan frowned as he looked at Xian Hao's gaze. First of all, I don't pose a threat to you. I don't have the destructive power of the Dragon King that you imagine, Xian Hao continued. Although I won't die, my physical abilities are no different from ordinary people, and I can't even beat ordinary people who have been trained. Do you think we will easily believe what you say? Lu Shanyan remained expressionless. It's okay if you don't believe me, at least let me finish speaking. I didn't expect you to easily believe me, Xian Hao lowered his head. Keep going. I am just an ordinary person with a tragic fate. A guy who claims to be a god threw me here inexplicably. Do you think I pose a threat to you like this? Xian Hao felt guilty and began to make up stories. How could tragedy come? Anyway, it wouldn't be even worse than him. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 4. Maybe one day I'll go bald and become stronger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. 4. Maybe one day I'll go bald and become stronger. Lu Shanyan listened to Xian Hao's speech while translating to Menek. He doesn't look like he's lying. Menek looked at Xian Hao's expression. The Dragon King probably didn't go to the drama academy to study just to lie, did he? Menek, this is not the time to joke, and I'm not a psychologist, so I can't tell if he's lying, said Lu Shanyan, pulling the trigger again. A few minutes later, Xuanhao recovered again. Sigh. It sounds like a tragic story, but you can't prove that you're not lying. Faster than last time, Yamahiko and Menek exchanged a glance. I know I can't prove it, so what I'm going to talk about next is the key. Xianhao said seriously. Speak up. Lu Shanyan and Menek felt a bit helpless, but this guy couldn't be killed. They couldn't think of any other way to deal with it at the moment, so let him talk whatever he wanted. Where is this? Xianhao asked this question again, the third time he had asked. You're quite persistent. No. This is a very important clue, at least I need to know what exactly happened. Xianhao looked at Lu Shanyan very seriously, then glanced at Menek next to him. He had just heard that the man in front of him called his foreign companion this way. If he guessed correctly, something big would happen next. This is Hamburg port, Lu Shanyan said as he looked at Xianhao's eyes. In 1900. Hamburg port. Xianhao recalled his past memories, ha 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 ha. What are you laughing at? Lu Shanyan frowned, his gun making a clicking sound in his hand. He didn't understand what was funny about this guy. Who the hell are you? He had to be nervous. The person in front of him had nothing to do with dragons no matter what he thought. As for the gods he said could give eternal life to his descendants, what else in this world besides Nidhogg? Isn't that the Dragon King? Their transaction was known by the dragons, which means it's a trap, and all of them will be in danger. Bang! Another shot. Dot. Lu Shanyan revealed his conjecture to Menek. Let me tell you. Can't you just shoot without moving? Before Lu Shanyan finished speaking, Xianhao recovered. Lu Shanyan and Menek exchanged a glance. Lu Shanyan walked up to Xianhao, but this time he didn't use a gun against him. Zhong. Xianhao said without any confidence, he didn't want to talk anymore because there was no need. After understanding the situation clearly, he still said nothing. The few people in front of us are probably the strongest combat force of humanity today. It's just a dream for an ordinary person to escape. However, according to his memory, these guys will soon receive their boxed meals. He just needs to endure and wait for the opportunity. From now on, I will personally watch you. Lu Shanyan grabbed Xianhao's head and looked straight into his eyes, as if trying to find something from Xianhao's gaze. Unfortunately, he was disappointed and had nothing. The pressure of the Dragon King. The suppression of bloodline. He now has a slight feeling that this guy may not really be the Dragon King. After all, the Dragon King wouldn't be so weak, would he? Can you tell me? What happened to you after I left? Sweat beads hung on Anger's forehead, and he was a bit confused at the moment because the scene before him was indeed very harmonious. Menek sat on the side wiping the bloodstains from his long sword, which seemed to be someone's blood, while Lu Shanyan sat in front of Xianhao, with two revolvers alternately pressing against his head. Occasionally, a shot was fired, and fresh blood splattered all over his body. However, he remained expressionless, feeling that he had formed a habit. Xianhao lay on the ground, repeatedly passing away without any attachment. No, he couldn't pass away. His consciousness remained clear, from the severe pain after being shot to the recovery of his body. Due to the curse, he couldn't avoid all the pain, and even couldn't get used to it, because every time it was a direct pain to his soul. But he also realized that every recovery seemed to be faster. Although his mind couldn't get used to it, his body seemed to be getting used to constant rebirth and even becoming more resilient. Of course, it still cannot withstand a single shot. But he had an intuition that after hundreds of years, his body might one day be so strong that a handgun wouldn't be able to harm him. If he had to be shot like this, enduring pain for hundreds of years, thinking about it would be hopeless. But do you know if one day he will suddenly go bald and become stronger? If that's really the case, maybe one day he can be invincible. The premise of pain is that he must be injured. He thinks that in the future, he should fully defend himself, but the top priority now is to find a way to kill everyone present, and then restore freedom is the key. Don't let him seize the opportunity, bastard. If Xuanhao remembers correctly, this opportunity won't make him wait too long. He deeply understood that he couldn't die no matter what, but his only concern now is what these guys will do if they directly pour him into the sea with cement piles. In order to prevent this from happening, he behaved very well at this moment, being harmless to humans and animals. Oh. Anger is back. Menek looked up. Yamahiko, you go contact the ship to continue trading. However, we need to be extra careful. Xuanhao heard the name Anger and looked up in surprise. Let me do it, you better save some bullets. It will be more convenient to use a knife. Menek walked up to Xuanhao and noticed Xuanhao's surprise at Anger. Lu Shanyan responded and prepared to arrange for further trading, but as Menek said, they need to be more cautious in this transaction. Xianhao's body is recovering faster and more complete, and now he has a humanoid appearance besides his skin. Menek was a bit puzzled. According to reason, if he were really the Dragon King, he could probably fight back at this level now, right? Why hasn't there been any reaction? Puff. Cut it down, sigh, the knife I just wiped is dirty again. This. Anger suddenly felt that the guy lying on the ground was so pitiful. I said. Can you stop messing with me? If I could resist, I would have fucked you all long ago, okay? Xianhao was about to cry without tears. How could these idiots not understand the situation? He can't die again, it's just a waste of energy. What is he talking about? Anger asked Menek. I'm not sure, I'm probably complaining. At this time, Castle College had not yet been established, and only Yamahiko Lu understood Chinese. Although I may have some time to learn from Menek, I only know a few simple sentences. As for the meanings of doing and doing, he really cannot understand. Not long after, Lu Shanyan returned. What's going on? Lu Shanyan frowned and saw Menek sitting on Xianhao, who was bound to his hands and feet, with a long knife inserted into the ground next to him, and his blood had already been wiped clean. Oh, you're back. Menek felt a bit embarrassed. There's nothing he can do. This guy's recovery is too fast, and I thought he might have had the ability to resist long ago. But it seems that this guy, really, is very weak. Menek. I really want to spank you. Is this something I can joke about? Lu Shanyan's forehead was bulging. Anna, look at how honest this little guy is. I think Anger can handle him, Menek said, rubbing Xuanhao's head. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. 5. Curses. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10-5. Curses. For a moment, Lu Shanyan was speechless. Okay, if you want to blame it, then blame Xuanhao for being so incompetent. He should have jumped up and slapped these two guys to death. If he could have done it, he would have done it long ago. Xuanhao cursed these two guys, they will die without a whole body. Alright, the goods are coming soon. Let's prepare for the transaction. Lu Shanyan looked at Xianhao, who was lying on the ground beside him and remained motionless. What should this guy do? Someone must keep an eye on him. Lu Shanyan wanted to personally guard, but among this group of people, only he knew Chinese, and in this transaction, the delivery person happened to be Chinese, and he was responsible for translation. Anger, I'll leave it to you, okay? Menek looked at Anger next to him. Anger pulled out his folding knife and glanced at Xianhao, who was staring blankly on the ground. At this moment, Xianhao's body had almost recovered, and it could be seen that he was a very young and delicate Chinese boy. For some reason, he felt that this guy posed no threat to him. Okay, Menek got up from Xuanhao. Let's go, Shanyan. Don't worry. If he really is the Dragon King, no matter when he tries his best to fight us, it doesn't make a difference. He patted Lu Shanyan's shoulder. Those here are all dragon slayers, and dragon slayers never fear facing the Dragon King directly. Finally left. Xian Hao looked at the back of the two as they left and turned his head to look at Henri beside him. Henri was also staring at him at this moment, his folding knife emitting a cold light under the moonlight, ready to strike Xian Hao at any time. You scumbags like to die, I don't know how you will die. Xian Hao said to Henri in his broken English, hoping that Henri could understand human language. Then he quickly let him go. What are you saying? Excitedly lifting Xian Hao's neck, this sentence sounded like a provocation to him. It's like the Dragon King predicting their fate. Ah. It doesn't matter anymore. Anyway, I can't die. If you all die, I'll be free, Xian Hao said helplessly. What are you talking about? Henri pressed the folding knife against Xian Hao's neck. He couldn't understand Chinese and felt that it was important to learn Chinese from Lu Shanyan if there was a chance in the future. When you die, I'm free. Xian Hao felt like he was suffocating. MDZZ, a group of idiots. The drizzle still hasn't stopped. A whistle sounded, and the Queen Mary appeared in everyone's sight. Here we go. Lu Shanyan looked at the sea. A pitch-black lifeboat followed the undulating waves, with their companions guarding the Maxim heavy machine guns hidden under the rain. They don't know what kind of existence Xian Hao is, at least on the surface they can control the situation, but the unknown threat is even more terrifying than the one in front of them, and the thing sent this time is something that makes people shiver from the depths of their bones. Transaction number 190000666, this is the 666th item they purchased from the Far East this year. This damn number makes even the unbelieving Mr. Lu feel unlucky. 666, that is the exclusive number of the demon Satan. The lifeboat finally docked, and the sailor jumped onto the dock without even thinking about securing the boat. He just held on to the iron ring at the bow tightly with his hands to prevent the boat from being washed away by the waves. Because they didn't want to stay any longer, they received a call earlier asking them not to dock temporarily. They even wanted to sink the goods directly into the sea and return directly. Let's inspect the goods. We're all acquaintances now. If there's no problem, we'll pay immediately and you can leave as soon as possible, said Lu Shanyan in Chinese. He also noticed the condition of these sailors. The owner of the Queen Mary was a Chinese, and these European sailors were only responsible for sailing the ship. The real ones in charge of trading were the subordinates of the Chinese boss, a tough man with a braid on his head like Lu Shanyan. But he kept his head down, and Lu Shanyan couldn't see his face clearly. The man raised his head and shook it. Lu Shanyan was taken aback. This man didn't want to speak, but couldn't speak. His lips were tightly sewn together with black hemp thread. This cruel technique made him feel unbelievable. Doesn't he need to eat? Four sailors carried a pitch-black box from the ship to the shore. The box looked old and was covered with dense seals, as well as the transaction number 190000666 and the family emblem of the Castle family. These seals were affixed by the Castle family during the inspection of goods in China. However, this valuable item must be inspected again now. Menek stepped forward and pulled out his long sword hidden under his windbreaker. No one felt that he was going to chop people. For these maniacs who were constantly walking at the tip of the knife, carrying a knife was not a big deal, and no one even thought it was very dangerous. He slowly cut along the gap in the box lid, and the long knife was as convenient as an arm in his hand. Taking a deep breath, Menek raised the kerosene lamp in his hand and pushed open a gap in the lid, casting a faint light into the box. Looking at the objects inside, Menek took a deep breath. At this moment, he felt even more that Xian Hao before was an accident, and that was their goal. He closed the lid again and nodded at Lu Shanyan. According to the previously agreed price, all 50,000 marks will be paid in silver coins. Lu Shanyan translated Menek's words, and several companions walked over carrying boxes containing silver coins. However, the Chinese man who came to trade shook his head repeatedly, showing no interest in this huge sum of money. After all, their own lives were more important. He took out a prepared letter from his pocket, handed it to Lu Shanyan, and then bowed, taking the sailors as fast as they could run. Everyone was stunned and said, "Are we that scary?" Everyone is looking at Lu Shanyan. After all, he is the only one here who understands Chinese. The letter said that the goods will not be charged this time. This is a cursed thing, and anyone who gets infected with it will die. Lu Shanyan tore up the letter in his hand, looking expressionless. At the end of the letter, it said that this is the last transaction with us. Does it sound like we've made a profit? It's just a one-shot deal, Menek grinned. I suddenly remembered something interesting. Cursed things, cursed people, stuck people all die. And cursed immortality. Which curse is more powerful? Lu Shanyan looked at the Queen Mary in the distance, and on this stormy night, the ship did not dock for rest and turned around and ran away. This thing really sticks and dies. What's the use of running so fast? Perhaps you want to die later. After all, we guys have to die first, right? Menek patted the box. This thing really looks like a coffin. Coffin, coffin, promotion and wealth. This joke is not funny. End of this chapter.